is one of the drinks that I love to serve pretty much at almost every event that I do. And it's usually one of the opening cocktails, and it's usually, people love the flavor of it. And one of the main reasons that they do is that I make everything about the Pimm's from scratch. So what I set out to do is I remember trying Pimm's a long time ago and tried a Pimm's cup, and it was fine and it was great. And I tried the Pimm's on its own, and that's really what struck me. I didn't feel, I don't know, there was something about the flavor of it wasn't enough for me. And I really wanted to get in there. I wanted to recreate it. I wanted to add more flavor to it. And that's what I want to show you is kind of my rendition of what the actual Pimm's infusion is that will be made, that will be used to make a Pimm's cup, which will be on a separate video. So Pimm's basically was created back in 19th century. There was a son of a farmer, James Pimm, who owned in the 19th century London, he owned an oyster bar, and he created this gin-based spirit. And it is a gin-based liqueur aperitif spirit because it is a low proof. It's around 50% alcohol. Sorry, it's about 50 proof, which is about 25% alcohol. And I did my best to really, it's not so much I'm trying to recreate exactly what Pimm's tastes like, but I'm taking the elements of the gin and the sweetness and the spiciness and then adding different things in it to that just adds these kind of interesting layers. And I encourage you, this is really just a blueprint, I just really encourage you to make this your own. This is probably one of the most widest kind of palette that I have of infusions, meaning this is game on for everything. So there really isn't anything you can do wrong here is my point. It's pretty much you use what you have, okay? But I am going to use some simple things today that I know you probably have in your kitchen or have access to. And I've got celery, strawberries, I've got fresh popcorn that I made, and I have, this is wild purple sage. So one of the things that I try to focus on with a Pimm's infusion is always try to have kind of 4 elements to infuse in there. A vegetable, a fruit, some kind of herb, then you have that nice little wild card. That's where the popcorn comes in. Just something that's offbeat, different, something that you wouldn't expect that's going to add another layer. And that's, I mean, you could put peanuts, you could put whatever you want in there, but just things that would make it interesting. So to make a simple infusion, we're going to use this infusion jar. Of course, this is a huge one. I have a huge event coming up. I have to make 200 Pimm's cups for a charity event. So I have to make a lot of this. So I'm going to get a head start here doing this. So what I want to show you is basically how I layer it, which is really important. But the infusion process is always the same. And I'm just going to repeat it even though we have different infusion videos. Is whatever jar you have, you're going to fill 3/4 of the way, okay, with ingredients, and then you'll fill it with alcohol. And I'm going to talk to you about the formula of the booze when we get to that. So the first layer is I'm going to use strawberry. So this is my fruit, right? I don't have to take the stems off of this, okay? So the whole point is I'm wanting earthiness, I'm wanting greenness. There's not a whole lot you can do wrong with the Pimm's. The only thing is if you're putting too much spice and it's going to make this way too spicy. So as you can see, that's the first layer. And I'm really wanting to get a fruit flavor, right? So the next part is we're going to put some celery. And the wonderful thing about this is we can use the whole thing. So I'm going to chop that up. Now what's the celery? The celery is that vegetable note. It's going to add another layer. It's going to add that celery tone, that little bit of vegetable and greenness and hopefully a little bit of bitterness as well, because that's what we're looking for. To recreate the Pimm's, you've got sweetness and you've got a little bit of bitterness in there. And what I like to do is just cover it, okay? And then let's lay in the sage, which is the strongest ingredient, right? I don't even have to cut that up. I'll just lay that in there like that. That's beautiful. And then we'll do the popcorn, right? So we'll get that in there. And then let's cover that. So basically what I'm thinking is if we're looking at this, you're looking at about 2 to 3 layers depending on your jar. But if you can, that's the best way. So if you had a smaller jar, just cut those strawberries and the celery really, really thin so you have more to layer. 'Cause it's more about like if you could really layer those 4 layers even twice in a small jar. And let's get this. Perfect. See, if you're looking down in your jar, you literally can see that you're covering each layer. Doesn't have to be complete, but you're covering it. Okay, now let's go back to the strawberries and repeat. So now you have all your layers built and everything is exactly how you want. You're happy with it. It's nice and uniform. Now we're ready to put the actual alcohol in to make the infusion. Now let me give you the formula of what this is. It's really, really simple, and it's also something that I've kind of adapted over the years and taken out and so forth. But it basically, we're using three things. We're going to use gin, sweet vermouth, and Grand Marnier. Sweet vermouth, basically a wine and spirit liqueur made with spices, and Grand Marnier is basically a cognac and orange, basically a bitter orange distillate mixed, which is very sweet and lower in alcohol. So what I'm doing is I've got these elements that are going to help the different sweetness and the bitterness and the herbs, but now I've got the actual alcohol that has its own sweetness and bitterness and so forth to create the spirit. The general formula that I know and what I've come up with and what I like to use, which works very, very well, is you're going to use 2 parts of gin, 2 parts of sweet vermouth, and 1 part of Grand Marnier. So let's just say if we were going to talk in cups. It would be 2 cups of gin to 2 cups of sweet vermouth to 1 cup of Grand Marnier. Okay, so let's start layering it. So I'm going to do my 1 part of gin first. You could pour all of this alcohol into different measuring cups and mix it and make sure if you want. But I have found this to really, really work well as long as I'm layering it. But if you're using a smaller jar, you probably would do that anyways. I think it would be easier for you to just put it into a measuring cup, put everything in there, give it a stir. This is going to sit for 7 days. This is the sweet vermouth. So I've already done that. We're almost halfway there. We'll take the Grand Marnier and we'll put in about half of it. Sometimes I'll use a liter. Sometimes I'll go a little bit higher and use a liter. But like I said, there's a good amount of sweetness in this. So I'll go about half of that. And then we'll go back to the gin. So I do a whole another part of gin. And it looks really, really cool. So what's really nice about this is I'm going to talk to you about how to strain it at the end and so forth. But it also is a really cool thing to kind of keep around or keep on your bar for people to see. Because it just really, I think people will be really kind of intrigued, what you did and what's in it and how is that possible. So we're actually going to be pretty good here. So this really just about made it, you know what I mean? I could probably put a little bit more alcohol. I'm not going to do it right now just for these purposes. And we're going to take, what I like to do is just kind of push this down a little bit, right? What's great is because the popcorn is going to get soft, and but you're really going to, it's going to be a really interesting flavor. Now listen, the popcorn, how I made the popcorn was really just, I popped it in the pan just with no salt, a little bit of salt, but no butter, just olive oil or just some kind of oil. I think it's smart to at least, if you're going to do popcorn, just try it on its own that way, very simply. And then if you love it, if you want to get creative, maybe you put a cheese popcorn in there. I don't know. I mean, you could get creative with it. But I think just what I'm trying to do is get the essence of the corn coming through and the popcorn coming through. So again, you let this sit for about 7 to 10 days. It just has to be in a cool, dry place. It doesn't have to be in the refrigerator. That actually slows down the process of infusing. Okay, so I've let this Pimm's infusion sit for about 8 or 9 days. Again, the ideal time is somewhere between 9 and 10 days. After 10 days, it's automatic. You don't ever have to taste it. It's ready to go. We're basically going to strain this now. It's a little bit more complicated for me because I'm using such a large jar. But you might have a smaller jar, you're going to have a different size strainer. So whatever you have is fine. I'm just going to show you what I do. As you can see, like all that vibrancy that we dealt with last week, you know, the colors of the strawberries and the brightness of the popcorn, it's pretty dull now. So literally all of the flavor from those things has gone into the jar. So what I'd like to do first before I strain it is I'll take a ladle or something like that, and I just want to mix it around a little bit. Just want to do a little, it's such it's such a great flavor. I have to make 200 of cocktails with this for an event that I'm doing that are kind of like a kit. And this is really, really cool. I'm loving the smell of it already. We'll wait to taste it. But what I'll do is I'll push this around. And then as you can see, I have a big jar. So you might be able to take whatever jar, you might be able to just strain it right into a measuring cup, but this is a good amount of liquid. So what I might need to do here is I'll prop this up and I'll take my jar and I'm trying to get everything right through this. And you can see the color. The color is gorgeous, right? That's a lot of the strawberries coming through. I think the celery is going to be a really interesting tone in that. And I think the wild sage too. So let's see. So what we're going to do, now unfortunately, like I've said many, many times, we're straining this out and I think the tendency is like, oh my God, that strawberry must taste amazing. It doesn't. It's really just straight alcohol. So let's put this to the side. I'm just so tempted though. Give me a second here. It's been a while since I've made a Pimm's. So let's give this a little taste and see how it came out. Oh my God. You really taste the celery, the strawberries, the touch of that sage coming in. The popcorn is very, very subtle, but it's there. I'm really tasting the celery and the strawberries. Okay, so I've strained that. And again, there's no way that I'm going to take this big thing and pour it, but what I've done is really important. I kept the bottles that we use. So these are the sweet vermouth bottles. And I actually took a little tape to it and I labeled it Pimm's. So I think that's smart to do that just so you kind of remember where things are and you keep track of it. I really have to do it because I'm dealing with a lot of bottles. And then what I'll do is I'll just ladle this up right in there. As long as you have a decent strainer, you're fine. And we'll just strain that in. Again, this is probably, we put 5 bottles in it. I'm going to say that the yield is going to be about 4.5 bottles. So this is definitely a good amount that gets, you know, absorbed into the actual infusion. And one of the things I really encourage you is to not really try to squeeze the ingredients and get every drop out of it. Just let everything be. It mixed perfectly. It's a wonderful, wonderful flavor. And I think the celery is a really great touch to it, which I love that because it's something that you can easily get. And because this has sweet vermouth in it, and what I've explained to you is a wine base, I probably will refrigerate these. That you could keep them out, depends on when you're going to use them or how much you're going to use, but it's a good idea if you could refrigerate them. They'll definitely last for at least 6 months. And I think the fun part is your brain kind of thinking, what am I going to do differently next time? Because that's what I am. Is like, once I've done this, it's like, oh, this is great. Maybe I'll do this for a while, but what am I going to do next time? So we'll finish this up. And each bottle will make about 12 cocktails, 12 Pimm's cups, okay? So let's do that. And there we go. So I'm going to stop that for now so you get a sense of it. There's 2 bottles. And now let's work on the Pimm's cup.